To this now, the 15th BRICS summit ended yesterday. The group of nations announced the admission of 6 new members in what some say is an attempt to reshape the global world order and provide a counter movement to the US and its allies. From the beginning of next year, Iran, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Argentina, the UAE and Ethiopia will join the current 5 members, Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa, as part of the bloc. Now let's find out what this means for South Africa and possibly the entire African continent. Professor Jannie Rossouw is Professor of Global Political Economy and Economic Sanctions at Wits University. Prof, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Now, China got its big plan for membership expansion. I mean, the country's President Xi Jinping has described the expansion of the BRICS bloc as historic. How would you characterize this development? And more importantly, is it a big win for South Africa?
Well, the first thing I have to say is this new enlarged BRICS, I like to call it BRICS Plus, to distinguish it from BRICS as we've known it up to now with membership with 5 countries. So BRICS Plus, then the new BRICS with 11 members. It is a game changer. However, South Africa now has to take note of the fact that we are no longer the only economy in Africa represented in BRICS. We are now one of 3 African countries with BRICS membership, and that might change our role within BRICS. I also have to add at this point, though, that all of us in South Africa can feel very proud about the fact that the South African government arranged a very successful BRICS summit. We have so little to be proud of in South Africa at the moment, but this is one thing we can really feel good about.
In fact, I think it was the Russian President Vladimir Putin who commended President Cyril Ramaphosa for his diplomacy and how well he handled even the run-up to the BRICS summit. I mean, we know it was marred pretty much by the imminent arrest warrant for President Putin. So what do you then make about how, South Africa handled this? And particularly also looking at, the Minister of International Relations as well, who had a significant role to play.
Yeah, indeed. This shows that if we really apply our minds in South Africa, if government applies its mind, we can still be successful in this country. And it really raises with me the question, why can't we be as successful in resolving other problems that we have in South Africa, for instance, with the post office or with Transnet or a long list of other entities.
And perhaps that's why I asked the question initially, what it means for South Africa, particularly the people on the ground. But Prof, let's talk about the bloc now, the BRICS Plus. You know, there are divergence of views on critical issues as far as this particular bloc is concerned. How significant and feasible is it for this group of countries to offer a new world order, that's counterweight to the Western-led world, as many hope to see and many hope that this represents?
Yeah, it's clear that this is a strategy to serve as a counterbalance to the G7, for instance. However, I must add that in the new BRICS Plus with 11 countries, decision-making will be much more complex. And it also concerns me that we now have a grouping called BRICS Plus, where all the countries are not really exemplary in protecting human rights, human freedom, individual rights, etc. So it is a concern that more authoritarian countries tend to get together in BRICS Plus. And there will have to be a discussion about human rights and individual liberties and freedom within BRICS Plus.
And to that point of, the context of the G7, with many suggesting that the new bloc emerging, is to rival the US leadership or the G7 for that matter. How important is the US's response here, from a geopolitical, stance?
Well, it's not clear exactly how the G7 or the US will respond to BRICS Plus, but it is clear that BRICS Plus is seen as an instrument to move away from the Western bloc to move away, especially from the US dollar. But I should add that to establish a new international currency is not as easy as discussions make it out to be. And South Africa is in a particularly difficult position in respect of this BRICS currency, because as late as July 2022, our Minister of International Relations, Dr. Naledi Pandor, expressed support for an African, call it an African currency, a continent-wide currency. And at the same time, we have to take cognizance of the fact that we are part down here in the south of the common monetary area comprising South Africa, Eswatini, Lesotho, and Namibia. So all these things still need to be teased out so that we can understand South Africa's position and South Africa's role.
Prof, what do you read into those countries that have been included and those that have not? For instance, a lot of talk around Iran and Saudi Arabia, and their significance to Russia, and of course the exclusion of Nigeria. To what extent should we be reading into these?
I've not seen the criteria used, Unati, based on which BRICS, the 5 countries, decided to allow the 6 additional countries. So until such time as the criteria, as we see publication of the criteria, it will be very difficult to judge. So I would like to see the criteria before I pronounce on that matter.
No problem, Prof. Prof, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Really do appreciate it and appreciate your analysis. Of course, that was Professor Jannie Rossouw, and he is a professor of global politics, political economy and economic sanctions at Wits University.